Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, the PMS RMS Connection, working in tandem to amplify your hotel's bottom line, presented by Stay in Touch and Rainmaker. I'm your host, Free Gola, and I'm joined by my panel of hospitality tech leaders. First up is founder and CEO of Stay in Touch, Yas Shab. Yas has 20 plus years of experience in hotel software technology. He began Stay in Touch with a vision of reinventing the hotel PMS technology, making it simple, mobile, and transitioning the software to the cloud. Prior to Stay in Touch, Yas spent 17 years at Microsystems as a senior VP in charge of global product development and strategy for the lodging and e-commerce divisions. During his tenure, Micro's hospitality products became the global market leader, growing the company's revenues from less than $300 million to $1.1 billion. Joining us from Rainmaker is VP of Hospitality Sales, Ellis Connolly. Ellis brings extensive hotel industry knowledge and expertise to the Rainmaker Group with more than 15 years of experience in corporate hospitality. Connolly is responsible for leading Rainmaker's growing sales organization and making the company's industry-leading suite of revenue management and profit optimization solutions accessible to the international hospitality market. Connolly's broad range of experience includes executive and senior level sales, revenue, and marketing positions at Trust You, Cvent, and Aramark, and other leading suppliers to the global hotel and travel sectors. With that said, we are going to jump right into the webinar agenda, what you'll be learning during today's presentations, why a seamless PMS and RMS integration is essential to your technology strategy and revenue goals, how to optimize your best revenue strategy to enhance your bottom line, and how to capitalize on total guest revenue potential. And of course, throughout the presentation, please do send in any questions or comments you have, and we'll get to them later on at the tail end of the webinar. Before we get started with our first presenter, I do want the audience to answer 2 poll questions. First poll I'm launching now. How would you assess the integration between your PMS and your RMS? Both integrated, allow your property to run smoothly. Both are integrated, but data does not sync well. Both are fully integrated and share data seamlessly, and systems are not integrated at all. Give you guys about 20 seconds to give your answers, and then I'll launch the results. Got 10 more seconds here. And I am closing the poll and sharing the results. How would you assess the integration between your PMS and your RMS? 50% say both are integrated and allow your property to run smoothly. 25% say both are fully integrated and share data seamlessly, and 25% say systems are not integrated at all. That, of course, is what we'll be discussing throughout today's webinar, so we'll address many of those concerns. Our next poll question. While looking for tech solutions for your property, what is the most important thing you consider? Service level tech provider, ease of use and usability, features and functionality, API connection integrations, or price? Another 20 seconds here, and then we'll move along. All right, 5 more seconds. Closing the poll now, sharing the results, and it looks like overwhelmingly features and functionalities come out ahead. All right, I'm going to get back to the presentation and our first presenter, Yas Shab. It's going to cover why a seamless PMS and RMS integration is essential to your technology strategy and revenue goals, and how your PMS and RMS should be working together. What kind of data should be going back and forth. Jos?
Thanks, Ray. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you may be. Yeah, I was just looking at the poll that came back and seeing that price and API were pretty much not on the list of preferences that people would have in selecting a new system. What's very encouraging to see is that service is obviously very important, which I think is probably key, especially in today's world where you have software as a service. The word is already in it. To provide good service, to ensure that the vendor that you have and the customer that you are working well together, and that the vendor provides more than just reactive service to you, your hotel, and your staff members. But it's kind of interesting to see that there is very little interest in providing good API, providing good connectivity to third parties, because specifically to a hotel, there's obviously so many different systems that are in play to serve a guest throughout their lifetime of their stay, that you kind of almost have to make sure that integration is done really well. And as Free mentioned, I spent years at Micros previously, where at the time the world was pretty much around software installed in the basement of a hotel, and very difficult to connect certain things at some point in time, but also very costly and expensive to do. And I think it also required always quite a lot of effort from both the hotel and the vendor to accomplish it. And I think definitely the hotel part is something with cloud systems can be avoided, because specifically as actually to the interface today, integration is not necessarily, doesn't require any involvement from the hotel anymore, other than requesting the two connections from both vendors. The vendors will basically connect remotely with each other. Both cloud systems will be connected to each other, and things begin to run very smoothly. I think when people look at buying PMS systems or RMS systems for that matter, they really need to take a good look at how does it integrate with third parties. Does it integrate with more than one third parties? Does it integrate with more than one CRS, more than one RMS? All of these things I think are going to be very important for you as a vendor to select the right PMS system. Sorry, as a hotel to select the right PMS system. You want to make sure also the PMS is very robust. It's up all the time. Legacy systems are not up all the time. Early cloud systems are, causing some issues here and there. You really want to make sure that there's a good investment done in the back end of that particular cloud system, that it runs all the time. But again, most importantly, that it's very open and allows for connectivity to anything that you may want to need. Talking about the PMS to begin with a little bit, it's probably the heart of your hotel. It's probably also the most common system that you will find in a hotel. In my opinion, sometimes what a little bit undervalued, because it basically a lot of the work is done in systems that are connecting to the PMS systems. Specifically to revenue management, which is a much more cooler thing to do, I guess, than cleaning a room or working in housekeeping and changing room status. But nevertheless, that's a very integrated part of your hotel. And if that doesn't work, and if that doesn't connect to certain things the right way, you won't be able to serve your guests correct. You won't be able to get the right price going between the revenue management system and the PMS system, and therefore you would probably lose out on cash, and definitely you would lose out on service. So ensuring that your PMS is connected well, that it has lots of APIs is key. You want to make sure that it collects data from everything that's connected to it, puts it into the PMS, puts it in historical tables, also that it collects future data, that it collects future trends, and that all of that data can be sent to in this case, the RMS in the right format at any given time, so that the price decision can change and update it effectively at any given time. It's really important that connectivity is smooth. And the first poll that we saw, 50% of you guys feel that you're there, which is awesome, which is great. There's another 50% that what we can see there is some work required. So whether that required means changing the system, or whether that means going back to the vendor to ask them to improve on interfaces, that's obviously a case-by-case situation. But in general, if you can work towards collecting and moving back and forth all the important data, you will see an increase in revenue. You will see an increase in opportunities also. And talking about specifically the PMS and the RMS, of course, rate information is the key component that needs to go between both systems. But what's also very important is that room occupancy is handled correctly, that room status and occupancy are managed and are in sync at all given times. I think also what's really important is that revenue managers can access their system from anywhere, so they don't have to, like they used to have to go back to the desktop and make a decision. Or, I think lots of revenue management meetings used to be, I'm printing a report, I go in a meeting and then talk about it, and then I go back to the office and then change whatever we agreed on. I think in today's technology, it'd be so much easier if all of that can be done with a mobile component of a PMS or an RMS together. So everything has to work nice together. Everything has to be mobile and definitely has to be very integrated together. Next slide. So re-examining your PMS and RMS connection, as I mentioned, I think is key. If you really want to become part of the 50% that is very happy in the way things are smooth, it's important that the PMS that you have can send every information that the RMS needs between both systems. And I think, over the last 10, 20 years, and I'm sure Alice will talk about that in a moment, lots of the revenue systems are focusing entirely on room revenue, but now you also see trends, I think specifically Rainmaker, that there is more revenue than just room revenue to attain and to optimize. And I think when you want to improve the connectivity between both systems, it's I think very important that you look in those type of things. You want to make sure that it's mobile, and you definitely also want to think about, if you really feel it doesn't give you everything it needs, that you potentially should look into changing one or the other system. Definitely make sure they move in the cloud, and definitely make sure they're mobile as well. Free. Over to Alice.
I'm sorry, guys. I was on mute. Didn't realize it. So I would just want to follow up here, Jas. So with so much of the information being passed back and forth between the PMS and the RMS, is one system the system of record, or how should that information be stored? Or should it be stored primarily in one of the systems as opposed to the other?
No, I mean, it always gets distributed, and in order for systems to work optimized with it, they probably store parts of that data in their own sets of environments. But I would say in a hotel, the PMS should definitely be, or probably is definitely the system of record when it comes to inventory, rate management, rate setup, and definitely the actual work of the effort of getting a price to the customer and the customer buying the room. But if you compare it to the revenue management, if the revenue management system had to come back for every little thing to our system to find out what was going on, the decision would take way too long, and it would never be the right decision either. So you'll have a system of record, and then depending on what's connected, certain components that data will reside in that other system, whether it's a CRS or an RMS system.
Absolutely. And obviously before cloud became a huge component here, there were large batch updates to try to move data between one system to the other. How often does this syncing happen now that these two systems can be connected in the cloud?
It's pretty much real time. Anytime a rate changes, anytime occupancy changes, anytime a guest checks in or checks out that affects potential revenue patterns, we send that information to an RMS system, and they do their thing and send us back what needs to be the updated price or the updated component related to that.
Absolutely, which makes, goes back to your point. It's important that you arm your staff with a type of tools that they can have access to data, because they are still the front line of that data. They've got to be able to make those changes in the system in order for that information to be passed back to the RMS. All right, so.
Exactly. And I think, sorry, and I think also Alice will probably talk about some of the additional revenue in addition to rooms. We on the PMS side experience interesting opportunities with early check-in, room upgrade, add-on upsell. Those are, very little kind of revenue managed, so to speak. That's quite often done manually, but I think that's a large opportunity also for cloud-based RMS systems to react on those effectively and help further increase that revenue potential.
Absolutely. All right, Alice, we are moving forward to you. Alice is going to talk about optimizing your best revenue strategy to streamline pricing, enhance guest acquisition, and boost your bottom line. Alice?
Yeah, thank you. And Yas, a lot of great points there, and definitely some things for me to build on. But quickly, I just want to tell a very quick story, and this is something that my team has been making a little bit of fun of me over the past few weeks. And we recently had our big sales and marketing all hands kickoff to get everybody excited for the plans and goals that we have set for 2018. And I started out my presentation by talking about planting trees. And if you've ever heard this, saying, it's, when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is 20 years ago. So when we start thinking about RMS and we start thinking about when systems were coming into play from that perspective, it was about 20 years ago, or at least that's when Rainmaker got its start in business. And then when you ask when's the second best time to plant a tree, it's now, right? So this has many meanings to many different people in many different situations, but I think it has it can resonate here, right? So from an RMS perspective, there have been hotels and sophisticated hotels and maybe not so sophisticated hotels that have been implementing and rolling out pricing strategies and revenue management strategies for many, many years. And some of those strategies are still good to this day and will still support a successful, profitable organization. With the enhancement of technology, with the sophistication of products, and with just the overall amount of data that can be leveraged within a hotel ecosystem that can impact pricing strategies. I think that we are just on the cusp right now of seeing some truly amazing things happen in the revenue management space. And one of the most important pieces of that is the integration between revenue management systems and PMS platforms. And I would agree with Yas's statement around the PMS being the source of truth, at least in these types of relationships. So I'm happy to talk a little bit more here and get to the next slide. Now, why are the reasons that a PMS and RMS should be tightly and succinctly integrated? So obviously there's the transfer of data that needs to happen, and that needs to be clean. It needs to be, as Yas said, real time, so that you're working with data that is fresh and relevant. So years ago, as Yas was talking about sitting down in your revenue management strategy meeting for the revenue managers on the phone, if you printed out a report that you ran from the night before and you sat down in a meeting at 10 a.m. the next day, that data is basically probably not good. I'm sure there's some deliverables you'll be able to take out of it. But in the fast-paced environments that we work in these days, you need to have up-to-date and current and relevant information. The tight integrations with the PMS and an RMS allow you to do that. So at Rainmaker, we have a platform of products that allow you to look at your revenue strategy, your trends, and make adjustments quickly and on the fly, also through some of our mobile applications. So the first piece is about mastering the complexity. So there are so many things that revenue managers and folks who are setting revenue strategies need to be paying attention to and need to be looking at. And quite honestly, it's almost impossible to do that within a manual environment. So I encourage everyone on the phone to leverage technologies, whether it be Rainmaker or Stay in Touch or CRM players or whatever it may be that you're using within your hotel environment or your hotel tech stack. The second piece is delivering certainty, right? So you need to be able to, from a revenue management perspective, manage up to your asset managers, to the owners of the property, to senior leadership within your organization, as well as managing down throughout the rest of your team, setting your strategy, making sure that people are in line with how you're setting rates, making sure that people are in line with how you're managing your free sale opportunities across your group environment. And the last piece around integration, at least for the purpose of this presentation, is providing control, right? You want to make sure that there's transparency across all of your strategies so that you have the opportunity to capture trends and make quick decisions about moving rate or shutting down segments or channels to make sure that you're always putting the most profitable guest in the best room at the right time. Next slide, please. Now, if you ask a hotelier what is their most valued asset, and outside of the actual hotel, they're probably going to say time. And I think that resonates for people outside of the hotel industry as well. You know, as data gets more complex and you're looking at different data inputs to help drive rate strategy or overall revenue strategy, the things that start to bog you down and get in your way of actually driving and creating and being constructive around strategy is the cobbling together, the accessing of data, trying to pull it all together and make sense of it. What tight integration between RMS and PMS systems do is it really pulls all of that information together for you, allows you to, at single click of a button, have all that information accessible and ready so that you're not spending hours upon hours within Excel, and you're actually spending hours upon hours with your team on the sales side, whether it be transient or group, and you're making decisions about where to place people within your hotel, where to move people, and potentially make more revenue and bottom line for your property. Next slide, please. So tying this together specifically to the integrations, and you know, Jos talked about now that PMS has moved into the cloud. And by the way, Jos and Stay in Touch have done a great job of creating a product and has just continued to build on features and functionality. And we get a lot of great feedback on our side about the Stay in Touch product. And obviously we have a great integration with them. So, you know, understanding quickly and being able to analyze demand patterns and allowing platforms like Rainmaker to forecast demand, which then allows us to better optimize as you move and pick up pace and kind of move through your strategy at the property. Projected events. So essentially, you know, we have integrations within our platform that pull events that are happening in specific markets that will allow you to plug events into your revenue management strategy. Also, we want to look at, you know, sales and catering systems to see where events and group bookings are being made, so we can look at group displacement so that we're better optimizing on your transient rates. Obviously, you know, looking to manage exceptions, looking for you know, implementing hurdles and moving things through so that you're making sure you're putting the right rates at the right time. And I think the two last pieces here, which is understand behavior and streamline processes. You know, when we talk about understand behavior, this is some of the pieces that Rainmaker is really investing in for 2018 and beyond. So if you know of Rainmaker, you know that we are very dominant within the casino and gaming space. And some of the reasons that we are dominant is because we have guest value and player value models that allow us to plug into our revenue management platform so that we're making sure to put the most profitable guest, meaning what are they going to spend outside of just room revenue, into the rooms at the right times. And then more importantly, turning away guests that will not be the most profitable. So some of the stuff that we've been working on and are very close to having baked is guest valuation models that play well into the hotel space, where maybe hoteliers aren't able to collect the full scope of what they're spending because they're not always charging it back to the portfolio or back to the folio. We're also looking at taking in information from CRM, you know, looking at social interactions, looking at reviews that they've written in the past, and really trying to give a score, or call it a tier, if you think in the loyalty world, around how we fit that guest in and what makes them more profitable for your hotel. And next slide, please. And finally here, it all becomes about increasing profitability. I think there are folks out there, and there are still folks out there that are setting rates, seasonally, and we're talking to those folks, and they have a summer rate and a winter rate, and that's it. And we're also talking, obviously, to folks in Las Vegas, New York City, who are changing rates by the hour, depending on how their demand shifts. What we want to try to do is, through data and through tight integrations with the PMS, is make all of those processes that you're trying to put in play manageable. By taking advantage of the controls that we offer, you're able to make faster and smarter decisions. I think that's what this all boils down to, is about getting your time back and having data that's clean and fresh and coherent, so that you're able to make quick, fast, smart revenue decisions. And then finally here, protecting the inventory for your most valuable guests. I think that's, if you ask me about loyalty, loyalty doesn't necessarily come down to a better rate. It doesn't come down to free internet. It doesn't come down to an F&B discount. When I think of loyalty, and when Rainmaker thinks of loyalty, we think of availability and protecting inventory. So we want to know that if we have guests that have a propensity to spend much more money, and we can create a more personable experience for them, that we have hotel rooms available for them for when they want to book. And that comes down to being able to forecast that type of demand, and at the end of the day, protect the inventory for your most valuable guests. So next slide, please. So how does all of this come together? And I say up here, you want to ensure that your data is not collecting digital dust, and that you're pushing us as your technology vendors to be more insightful and act more cunning around putting information in front of you guys to make better, smarter, informed decisions. As I said, when we look at integrating into Stay in Touch, we have multiple products within our platform that allow group pricing, transient pricing, a whole business intelligence suite. All of these are fully integrated, talking to one another and interacting with one another, in the whole mindset of making revenue managers and hoteliers' lives easy, so that they're making more money for your hotel. Thank you. Pass you back to you, Free.
Thank you. Let me follow up before we move forward. So is there a difference between using a rules-based revenue management system versus a science-based one?
Yeah, and it's funny, we get that question quite a bit. There's, in a rules-based environment, if you don't know what you don't know, you're not able to capture a rule to execute soundly on a strategy, which is why using algorithmic and machine learning-based processes allow multiple algorithms like at Rainmaker to capture those trends and capture those peaks and valleys that will allow you to capitalize on creating and executing against your strategy.
Okay, so the idea here is that the science-based one gives you better recommendations, because it's essentially at the outset, giving some kind of cadence or some kind of content or context to the type of trends that are coming.
But most definitely. And as we touched on before, there's just too much data that hoteliers have available to be able to create rules around every instance that could potentially happen that would need a hotel to change their rate or go and switch their strategy in a different direction.
Okay, awesome. All right, Ellis, thank you for that. We're going to move forward to Yas again, who's going to finish off the presentation by speaking about how to capitalize on the total guest revenue potential. Yas?
Yep, great, thanks, Free. Yeah, so So now that we've learned that a stable PMS with great connectivity to the RMS is obviously key, and that having the right strategies in place in the revenue management can drive and increase the revenue of the particular night of stay. As Alice also mentioned, the system learns which customer spends more than just at a room night at hotels and can use that for the next day. So what I kind of want to add on to that is that today's opportunities also allow for easier collection of revenue around just the night of stay, and that specifically relates to the possibilities that you have with mobile guest engagement on their smartphone. As you probably know yourself, when you get an offer on a smartphone and it's at the right time and the right place and you've nothing else to do, very easily you tend to click that button and buy whatever it is that's presented to you. That happens through social media, that happens through the web, that happens on Amazon, it happens all the time, whether you like it or not sometimes. But it's a reality because it's so accessible, it's so easy to buy these things. Now that we have these integrated systems and now that they're all in the cloud, it's also very easy to connect a smartphone or any other mobile device to that application. So for example, to the PMS. And when you do that, you can start taking advantage of components like early check-in, room upsell, selling an add-on, or most importantly, or also very importantly in some cases, late checkout. All of these things used to be a negotiation at the front desk physically because that was the only way to get them. But now with software and algorithms and your thinking, they can be driven to the guest from a smartphone. And the smartphone is always in a good mood. It never does not want to upsell you. It just presents it to the guest whenever the time is right. And I think that's specifically important in today's opportunities to not only collect and work on optimizing your nightly revenues, but also try to see if you can add on another 25 to 50 bucks per night through one of those four opportunities by offering it on a mobile smartphone fully integrated with the PMS or part of a PMS. I think what you'll probably also see happening in the next period of time is that revenue management systems will pick up on that data. Because obviously we will send that value and that spend to the revenue management system, and the revenue management system will then use that as Alice earlier mentioned to see who spent the most in the hotel and who am I going to give the room the next time and at what price. So by probably selling some of these add-ons at check-in or at check-out, 25, 50 bucks, you probably offer that same guest a different rate the next time he comes into the hotel because he's ready to spend a bit more. So the opportunity to increase your revenue by a great integration between the PMS and the revenue lies very much around offering real-time offers at the right time, at the right place. Early check-in when I'm at the hotel, when I'm driving to the hotel before normal check-in now time. If I had a late night and I want to sleep in a little bit, presenting late checkout at 9 o'clock in the morning or 10 a.m. in the morning before they leave is a great opportunity, and people will really click on that button and you've made another 25, 50 bucks to do that. And if revenue management and PMS systems work well together, then that price of an early check-in or a late checkout can optimize based on, what's your arrivals for the next day, what's your arrivals for the same day, who's leaving, what's the opportunity, and how many of those early and late check-ins can you provide. All of that can work really well when it's presented on a mobile device. It's much more personal, and the guest is simply much more intrigued to actually buy it. So you can buy it through a mobile device, you can buy it offer it through a self-service opportunity that you have at the lobby check-in, and you could still tell your staff also to obviously do something with it and offer that opportunity when guests are at the hotel. Next slide, please. So, according to Harvard Review, customers who had the best experience spend 140% more compared to those that do not. So what that probably means, and it's probably a true statement, if you have a good experience, whether it's in or around the hotel, you're generally speaking in a better mood and you're generally speaking more likely to buy something. So if you make the process around getting in and out of a hotel seamless, and you make it nice and you make it awesome, then people are simply probably going to spend a bit more around it, and they're also going to have a better experience, and they're going to remember that experience. So it's important that you can figure out ways to make the experience around these extra revenue opportunities very seamless and very interesting, so that guests actually are in a process, in a position or in a mood to buy those things. You know, the mobile component that's part of a PMS also helps the guest, him or herself, to be in more control, so they can work on their preferences. They can put those in the system themselves, rather than telling the staff member about the type of room they want, whether it's away from the elevator or whether it's close to the elevator. All of these things matter quite a bit when it relates to remembering that stay experience. And above all, I think you really want to make sure you don't ask the guest too much. Even though it's a cell phone, even though it's easy for people to enter data on that phone, or basically doing it on a self-service terminal in the lobby, you don't want to ask for stuff you don't really need anymore. Like, for example, the mailing address to send actually somebody a physical mail or a newsletter. That's so out of date. Why would you keep on asking for that? I've seen many experiences around check-in and check-out where people are still being forced to enter the full address details, which just prolongs the check-in experience, and it doesn't really bring anybody anything. And if we look at our example of our components within our system, where we also offer a full range of mobile check-in and check-out, we can switch on and off certain components, certain questions that are being asked. We see trends that the more we ask, or the more the hotel has switched on to ask the guests, the more drop-offs we have before the check-in is completed. So you kind of want to make sure that you create a seamless, short, quick experience and target at the right time the early check-in, the room upgrades, or the add-on. And if you do that, you'll definitely see an increase in revenue, and then that opportunity we can pass on to the RMS system, who can then calculate a new rate for the next time that same customer comes to your hotel. Right?
Awesome. And I think it just goes back to really trying to capitalize on revenue potential that is merely just paying attention or allowing the guest to make impulse decisions. Not everyone thinks about or thinks ahead about how they want to experience their stay, or how they want to check in, or how they want to check out. But if you're providing opportunities for them at the outset, and providing opportunities for them throughout the guest stay, then you greatly increase the opportunity for you to capitalize on that revenue, and to gather more information, so that you are strengthening that connection between your PMS and your RMS, and then can in turn predict what type of revenue can come in, when we're talking about total guest revenue potential. All right, so we're going to turn to the end of the webinar. Before we talk about the key takeaways, I do want to remind our audience that they can go ahead and send in questions and comments, and we'll get to those right after the key takeaways. Jas, you wanna wrap up here?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I can't stress it enough. As I mentioned, it's interesting to see that it wasn't one of the high points on the survey. A true good integration, so lots of APIs and lots of opportunities to connect systems to your PMS are truly key if you want to move your hotel and your guest service and your revenue forward, or anything for that matter. It's important that your PMS connects to anything that's out there. I think it's even more important, going back to service, which all of you really think is very important, that the vendors deal with that for you, and that you do not have to worry about that anymore in the past. So I think that's probably one of the key takeaways. As it relates to RMS, it's essential that as much data as possible is shared between both the PMS and the RMS. The more data your PMS can send to the RMS, the better decision they can make, and the more frequent it is, the higher the revenue return will be if you have those things in place. And then lastly, adding the mobile touch points, which is one of our key drivers and visions that we see out there, because everybody these days does everything on their mobile device, and basically people have a better experience from a company that provides mobile services. It's really key that you provide mobile solutions, but also that you take advantage of those by simply offering very tight and small revenue gains around the check-in and check-out experience. So it's, they're adding up. They're on its own, they're very small, but if you do it throughout the year, they're really adding up and easily can pay for the cost of your PMS and your RMS by itself. Those are my 3 main points for you.
All right, Alice.
Yeah, great point, Jas. And I just wanted to touch on something that you had said earlier about, collecting that ancillary spend data that's not necessarily what we're used to looking at from the hotel perspective. So the upgrade, the late checkout fees, So we are, very deep down the rabbit hole of figuring out not only how to identify that and pull that in, but also to model it around so we can see similarities across different guests so that we can start to model what potential more profitable guests look like. So I think it's a very exciting time, for hoteliers and for technologists in this space to keep pushing the line of where we're at and keep getting more profitable guests into the rooms of these hotels that we service. With that being said, the three takeaways that I have, obviously here on the screen, but I think we talk at Rainmaker a lot about revenue management and marketing as the power couple. That was actually our user conference last year. That was our whole theme. It really tells the story of, and not just within marketing, but a revenue management strategy needs to be ingrained within the culture of your organization. And that's all the way through the front desk, up to the front office, up to above property. And when we see properties that are strategically doing that, those tend to be the ones that are executing the best against their strategies, obviously, but also making the most money. And that's essentially what we're here to help you guys do from the RMS perspective. Data hygiene. I think everybody's heard the term garbage in, garbage out. It is not a sexy portion of what we do, but it is probably one of the most impactful efforts that you would do that will help you create, execute, and manage a great revenue strategy. And then finally here, I talked about time being the most valuable asset for hoteliers outside of their own property, right? So as we move into this cloud environment where I hope most folks are getting to on the hotelier side, and then we start to talk about total guest value and total guest valuation and looking at all these different metrics as well, and even things that sit outside of the PMS. And I talked about CRM, I talk about booking engine and things of that nature. Why take the risk of trying to track all that within a spreadsheet environment, which would be almost impossible with the amount of data that's coming in and you have access to? So make sure that you're working with companies, obviously like Stay in Touch and Rainmaker, that have some clean interface and work well together to make sure that your hotel and your rate strategies are successful.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We're going to move forward to the audience poll or audience questions. We do have a couple here. First one I'm going to address to you, Ellis. What do you think revenue strategists should be looking out for in the future?
Well, and again, to echo some of the statements I was talking about before, I think that the casino industry has done an amazing job of leveraging the tracking abilities of their guests to ensure that they're putting the most profitable guests in the rooms at that time, and more importantly, shutting off rooms for folks because they understand their demand. What we're doing at Rainmaker is kind of taking that same model and parlaying it into the hotel space, but taking different data inputs, because the hotel industry isn't quite at where the casino world is in regards to tracking that. So, some of the things that we see in a revenue strategy is, if it makes sense for a hotel to better track the total spend of that guest while they're on the property, what are we doing to incent behavior for them to push that charge back to the folio? Or what are we doing to, ensure that we're capturing all that, when they are on the property? So I would look to, in a revenue strategy, look at all these different inputs that have an impact on how guests spend and maybe calculating their propensity to spend, and then try to plug that into the strategy. And obviously with Rainmaker as a partner, we're going to be right there, hopefully providing you guys with some pretty interesting modeling that'll plug into our platforms.
Awesome. And this one's for you, Yas. With a Cloud PMS, are you actually able to customize the type of information being captured and communicated to the RMS? or do you have to create fields and map them?
You can, so the interface between RMSs is usually very well defined, and it usually allows to send pretty much every data that's collected around the reservation and the guest profile or guest card. So I think if you take that question a little bit different, then you can add lots of data around the guest to the guest card and the reservation. That data that you can customize that and add it where you feel it's needed to be added. And when it's added, it's stored on our side. And when the reservation data or the guest data is relevant to revenue management, it goes across to the RMS systems. So yes, you can collect multiple data points that are not necessarily standard, and also have the RMS system make use of those.
Awesome. All right, so I do have a question that hopefully both of you guys can address. You know, we have a working relationship. The integration is strong here. Obviously, you want to make it more robust. What areas are you looking to explore when it comes to Stay in Touch's PMS and Rainmaker's RMS to hopefully bring a little bit more flexibility and growth, you know, to hotels?
I think from our side, Alice can add on to that, but I think from our side, I think the interface between both systems is fairly robust at this point in time. It's been live for a year or two now. We want to further enhance it with the components around business intelligence, and then I think the opportunity that presents itself because of our already robust integration two-way, we definitely want to work on finding ways to optimize accelerate revenue around early check-in, late checkout, and those kind of things. I think that's a great opportunity for revenue and PMS systems to enhance that component and further increase revenue opportunities around that.
Yeah, and Yas, I agree. And having just been down in your lovely office there in Bethesda, you know, just before the end of the year, you know, I think there's, you know, I think the thing between our two companies right now is that there are maybe too many opportunities for us to look at in regards to what data we should be, you know, trying to evaluate and make more actionable for hoteliers. So it's, you know, it's a strategy for us at Rainmaker around this guest valuation model, and how do we collect information within the integrations that we have currently, obviously with Stay in Touch, and then, you know, what are some of the things that can help hoteliers get data easily, and are there ways to potentially tie that into you know, a mobile environment to collect information? And I know, Yas, you talked about not asking for what's not necessarily needed, but, you know, we're thinking about strategies and ways to collect tidbits of information that could help impact, you know, a customer or a guest valuation score that could give us better insight to find out where we would put them on a profitability scale. So I think there's a ton more things that we're going to be exploring and talking about. But as I said, we're definitely down that path of, you know, looking at modeling better within the hotel world, as we've done very successfully in the casino market.
All right, thank you guys so much. And I'm sure that is encouraging to hear for our audience. With new technology emerging every day, and with cloud being such you know, a phenomenon specific to the hospitality industry, it's good to know that there's always this working relationship intended to, you know, to progress and enhance you know, technologies for hotels today. So with that said, I want to thank our presenters for joining us today, for their great insight, and I want to thank our audience for sticking with us the whole way through. If you have any questions, please send them over to info@stayintouch.com. We'll be sure to answer those. And the webinar recording and presentation will be available to all attendees and non-attendees within 24 hours. Thank you guys again. Have a good day.
Thank you.